Hi, everybody. Welcome. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever it is you are. See a lot of familiar names.
Ooh, apologies. That's a good check mine. Boop. Yep. We're off.
Phones on silent. Dana, you want me to start? Are you good?
We are recording. I feel like everyone has joined that was in the reading room. So yeah, we are good to go if you are.
Perfect. I can start us off if you want. I just lost everybody. Okay, there you are. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to September's Leading Conversations. We're really excited that you're here. A couple of quick housekeeping items. Please stay muted or just be mindful of the background noise. If you have a question, please unmute and ask, or please utilize the chat. Um, these are NACA's monthly get-togethers, our meetings where we can just kind of get together and talk about hot topics. So we have the Human Animal Support Services team here with us today. We've got Elke Wills and Jennifer Reed. So I'm going to ask that you please utilize the chat if you have questions to start, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to hand it on over to you all.
All right. Thank you, Jerica. Nice to see everybody. I am Elke Wills, the Director of Human Animal Support Services, and I have been with the project for almost a year. And prior to that, I was at San Diego Humane Society as the Senior Director of Community Engagement for, well, 15 years. I always get this backwards. I was not Senior Director of Community Engagement for 15 years. I did multiple things over the 15 years, but when I left, I was the Senior Director overseeing our Lost and Found program, our community pet pantry, education, our learning and development team, and all the things out in the community. And then prior to that, I started my career in animal welfare about 21 years ago at the Humane Society of Yuma, which is in Arizona. So both are private nonprofit organizations with field services contracts in some form or fashion. So a lot of experience in the arena, and I'm really happy to be here today to share all the tools that we've compiled here at Haas, and hopefully you can take them back to your shelters and start implementing. Jen?
Hey everyone, my name is Jennifer Reed, and I am Haas's Senior Education and Program Specialist. And through my role at Haas, and I've been at Haas for a few years, but I have the pleasure of working with a lot of partner animal shelters across the country, sometimes going on site to help implement programs, just overall trying to provide support to all the animal shelters and folks working boots on the ground out in animal welfare, trying to make a difference. And so we work on a scope of different things over at Haas, but all centered around community-centric efforts. But before Haas, I also had the pleasure of working in the shelter for many years. At my local shelter, we were a pretty large open admission shelter. And through my time there, I started out boots on the ground doing adoption counseling for a few years, moved on to managing volunteer programs and starting our behavior program at the shelter. And I was there for about 7 years and really got to see kind of an evolution of us trying to move the needle on the work that we were doing, moving toward, how can we be more inclusive of our community, implement community programs. We also had field services that we collaborated with, so also really got to have a window in on the front lines and seeing how everything is really interconnected. So really excited to be here with this audience today.
So, just a quick Haas overview. I think really like the key to understanding Haas is, it's all about keeping people and pets together, kind of keeping and maintaining that human animal bond. And so, when taking all of these pieces of this very messy pie, a graphic here, we hope to see a reduction in shelter or into animals coming into our shelters, and of course, improving outcomes for both in and out of the shelter. So we talk a lot at Haas about community-centric programming and a community-centric sheltering model, and how all of the pieces and the things we're doing in the shelter relate back to the community and vice versa. We're all about encouraging a unified system of human and animal services where really collaboration and data drive policy and programming. So even though we're not here today to talk about relationships with social services, you'll kind of see it maybe interwoven throughout the presentation a little bit. Go ahead, Jim.
And so in today's session, again, we'll be focusing on what community support can look like and what ways do community members need help, how a trauma-informed approach can really help you in those interactions that you have with the community, helping you understand what's happening in the community, what it looks like when field services and animal shelters collaborate together. And some examples of proactive programs and practices, again, focused on keeping family units together when appropriate. And so we also recognize too that field services has efforts in a lot of different arenas. We're probably not going to touch on every single aspect that field services makes an impact in, but we'll dive in together. And I also want to mention that we really would love your participation today. We have some polls throughout the presentation. We have some topics slotted for sharing, so we really do want to hear from you.
Jen, do we want to say that if they don't want to use the Slido, they can throw their ideas in chat?
Yes,
I
yes.
know
So,
oftentimes we hear that, so just want to acknowledge. Feel free to throw it in chat, even though Slido is fun.
yes. Okay, and so we're going to talk a little bit about why pets are entering shelters. And so we know, at least nationally, a lot of pets entering shelters are lost pets, trailing right behind our owner surrendered pets. But what I really want to kind of focus our energy on is kind of looking to what are the root causes of animals entering shelters beyond just being surrendered, for example. And really kind of trying to answer this question helps us better understand, again, those root causes of why pets enter shelters and enter the system and what we could potentially do to help. And so the next few slides are going to kind of focus on the complexities that often accompany these scenarios and that people face along with their animals. And so, as our organization kind of started trying to dig a little bit deeper and trying to understand why pets enter the system, what we found, because when we go to try to understand, we go, okay, well, what does the data tell us? And you see this word cloud here, and it represents animal shelter data from a number of organizations and the detailed intake reasons they collect. And so, the one highlighted right in the middle of the screen is the one that we saw most often in this data set, which was general, which doesn't give us a whole lot of information to go off of. And as you can see, there are also a lot of reasons. And so this is just a challenge in our industry in general that we don't really have a set way that we all collect information to be able to look at this data on a large scale. And again, kind of without good data, it implements a little bit of a barrier into really understanding what's happening in communities, which allows us to plan interventions to try to help more people and pets. And so what I love about having you all in the room, because field services, again, often on those front lines, right, interacting with people, sometimes at the first point that they might reach out for help or have a call, you all also represent an opportunity to get a true understanding of what people are going through, and perhaps help us collect better data. And so through doing this, the linchpin to all this, really understanding what's happening in people's individual scenarios is really hinged on having really good conversations, knowing how to ask good questions so we can get a better understanding of what support people and pets may need. And let's see, let me this one quick. And so what I would like to do is kind of give you an example of how, and I'm sure you experience this in your day-to-day work, so it might come as no surprise to you. I want to give a little bit of an example of what kind of complexities we see in situations. And so I'm going to apologize probably for our bad acting ahead of time, but Elkie and I are going to read this scenario aloud to you all. Okay, and so we're just going to pretend this scenario sort of reads like it could be a person at the time of intake at a shelter, but this type of conversation can very well happen also out in the field. Okay, I'm going to be the owner and Elkie is going to be the staff member. Hello, I'm here to surrender my dog.
Okay, could you tell us why you're giving him up?
Well, for one, he's really hyper. Every time my girlfriend or I get home, he jumps all over us. Also, my girlfriend is pregnant and I don't know if having a dog is best for our growing family.
Oh no, I'm so sorry to hear that. If you would like, we have a dog training program where you can get some assistance.
No, no, thank you. I think I want to give him up to you regardless. When I approach him while he's eating, he snarls at me and tries to snap at me, which is a problem. Taking care of him and the baby will just be too much. I won't be able to pay as much attention to him as I do now anyways.
Oh, I understand that.
Okay. Think about what you just heard for a second, kind of lock it in your brain because we're going to ask you a question. Okay, so if you can scan the QR code on your screen. If you don't have a phone in front of you, that's okay. You can pop it in chat. But what do you think the primary reason this person is seeking surrender? And there's no wrong answer to this. Right, we have time popping up, behavior, baby cannot care for anymore.
Yeah. Behavior in the chat.
Doesn't want to put forth the effort, so maybe kind of related back to time. Simply don't want to. Yeah. Behavior's coming in strong.
Safety, life priorities.
Great. Okay, so all of these answers are great. I see I have one more person typing. Okay, wonderful. So you all are right on track. So as we kind of looked at this scenario, we tried to pick apart all the pieces we saw. So you all are totally on it, right? Behavior, actually multiple things, right? Maybe too active, maybe the what sounds like resource guarding, time, new baby, all of those things. So as you can see, like if we're trying to think about how we look at data too, like what does the shelter record as the reason, right? As we can see, the situation is complex. There's likely multiple reasons. And or we can ask more questions to really try to get a better understanding. And there's a lot of bias that can come into play with this too, right? I think I may have mentioned earlier when I worked in the shelter, I ran our behavior program. So if I were talking to someone listening to this scenario, I think for me, my bias is going to be hearing those behavior things coming to the forefront because I know in my, at least my work, ooh, I need to take those things into consideration. That's going to help me pathway plan. So those are going to stand out to me. And so we all have a little bit of a different take, which we saw in our little exercise and in the poll. And so, kind of in this sort of situation, we might find through some further conversation, digging in a little deeper, that the person maybe it's actually not the behavior itself that is the major concern for the person, and maybe presented an option of, say, like free or low cost behavior support and a professional. Maybe the person would have been willing to go forth with this animal to try some interventions, but that's one of those things that we don't know if we don't ask and ask some more questions. So I think this highlights, again, the complexities, but also the opportunities in asking more questions to figure out if there are solutions for these individuals. Okay, and the next few slides, I'm going to walk through some data that Haas has collected throughout various projects, just kind of highlighting again what folks might be facing, what we've learned about owners going through hardship. So the first one is that financial strain is impacting pet retention. I'm guessing that doesn't come as a huge surprise to probably folks in this room, but what we thought was interesting, but just totally makes sense, is that cost-related intake reasons not only impacted the most people, but it also came up across multiple areas whenever we were collecting data for this particular project. So if someone was experiencing cost impacts, say, with being able to afford pet food, they likely were also experiencing other areas of pet ownership. So like being able to afford medical care. And so again, this just kind of points to, do we have opportunities to offer services that support folks that are having financial strain? Again, like Elke was kind of alluding to, do we have partnerships that we could seek out even on the human service side so people get that full spectrum of care? And kind of on the behavior side, I think this is really interesting. What we learned through some data collection is that the most behavior-related inquiries, and we refer to here as the first point of contact. So when we were collecting data for this project, sometimes the first point of contact for folks was like a phone call to the shelter. It doesn't necessarily mean they were showing up in person. But we learned that for the most part, folks were concerned about nuisance type behaviors, not those due to safety concerns. And so what we mean by nuisance behaviors, those are behaviors that are typical pet behaviors that we see that there are often pretty straightforward remedies for. So it could be things like cat scratching furniture or having challenges with housebreaking a dog, all of those things that point to pretty straightforward intervention. So I think this just nicely highlights that some of the things folks might be struggling with, while they might be a significant stressor in their life, there could potentially be a pretty easy solution to try to help them navigate those challenges. And what we also learned through collecting data was about what owners are trying before they contact the shelter. And as you'll see, I want to highlight the number one thing at the top of the list is that nothing is tried before going to the shelter. So this can just highlight the need for either earlier intervention or having an easy pathway for folks to get information. And so again, I think that's where field services can be so impactful to getting folks help earlier along in their journey. Okay, so now we've kind of been talking about maybe the struggling pet owner side of things, but I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about more of those lost pet scenarios. We collected some data over at Haas to try to understand a little bit more about how finders of lost pets behave, what actions they take, things like that. And we have some really interesting insights. So we learned in a survey in 2022 that 57% of finders tend to immediately bring a found pet straight to the shelter and don't attempt any other method of reunification, like perhaps simply walking the dog around the neighborhood or posting on social media, that sort of thing. And so we know this bit of information about how they behave, what they do in those scenarios. We also know that the reunification rates of getting dogs and cats back to their owners at shelters is pretty dismally low across the country. And so this kind of points to a need to educate on best practices for reunification. You know, how can we utilize finders as advocates for these lost pets? And so basically allowing pets to have every opportunity to potentially be reunited, right? If we have that person that's invested in that pet that they have picked up, can they simply walk around the neighborhood, post some flyers, look to social media, also report the lost pet to the shelter? So really we're exploring all those avenues for reunification. I also want to highlight here too, we have a graphic from our shelter partner over at Lifeline Animal Project. They were able to dig into their shelter's data and their field services data, and were able to see that of the dogs, this is dogs specifically, the dogs that were reunified, they were able to see that those dogs were picked up or found within a mile of their home. So dogs aren't traveling often very far from their home base, which just again points to how impactful simply walking the dog around the neighborhood before bringing them to the shelter can be. We also learned that finders are often willing to play a willing participant in helping the pets that they find. So they're oftentimes over 1/3 of the time are willing to hold on to found pets. So not only may they be willing to try to find the owner, but they might say, "Yep, this pet can hang out at my house for a few days while I try to find the owner," offering another avenue for pets to get back home and to be housed outside of the shelter. You can see here this lovely flyer by Lifeline again. Their program is called Friendly Finder. So just highlighting the opportunities that really lie with finders to help pets get back home. And again, I think that's messaging that field services can often expand because you are, again, boots on the ground interacting with folks every single day. And one last bit about lost pet scenarios. I think this is just really interesting and highlights just some challenges we have, is talking about identification tags worn by pets. So in one study, we found that they surveyed folks at veterinary clinics, owners of dogs and cats, and found that of this subset of folks, 80% of them agree that it's important for pets to wear ID tags. However, of those, only 67% did not have a collar and tag. And so I find that interesting, right? They're saying we think it's important, but we have not done it. So there's a bit of a disconnect. You might be able to deduce that while they think it's important, maybe it's just hasn't been bumped up to the top of their priority list, right? I think we can probably all resonate with that a little bit. Like, I know I should exercise every day. I absolutely do not. And so even just messaging the importance of that, maybe making them readily available can kind of boost that up on someone's priority list for their pet. And we also collected data at one shelter and found that of all of the found pets brought to the shelter, less than 1% had an ID tag on. And so we are seeing perhaps why pets aren't easily able to make it back home because they are missing that ID tag. Or we might be able to view this from the opposite, right? Pets that do have an ID tag are probably pretty likely to be making their way home if those pets generally aren't coming to the shelter. So just the impact something as simple as suggesting or providing a collar and ID tag can potentially have. Okay, so I know I've shared a lot of data and things with you, but really the moral of the story is that in these scenarios, whether it's lost pets, owners needing help, all of those things in general, people need to know what to do sooner. So we've also learned that at the point of shelter intake, 85% of people say it's too late to get connected with resources. In whatever scenario they're experiencing. So we know how much of an impact it can be to get people what they need sooner. And I think that's where there's just so much opportunity online in field services and what you all do. And we also know, again, that finders often rush the pet to the shelter without trying some of those other things as well. So there lies another opportunity to communicate what actions we'd like for them to take.
Okay, so now on to all the work that you do on a daily basis. I'm going to pose this question here. The answer is very obvious according to the slide, but what group represents the largest outreach team in animal welfare? So this is no diss to those outreach teams, right? Many of your shelters may have outreach team, engagement teams, community teams, however you word it. But I think we know that you all are the obvious choice. You are the ones that are commonly in the or out in the community addressing these issues. You see the issues at the point of origin. You're talking to people on a daily basis, and you're really understanding what's happening in the community. So currently, our field service teams utilize to the best of their ability as a community resource because in reality, the ACO is part of the largest outreach group in animal welfare, like we just said. So maybe for some of you, you've been doing this work and you're like, sure, we already do this. But for those of you that maybe haven't had the opportunity or you work very separately from the shelter, it's just really acknowledging that you are in the neighborhoods daily. You have contact with hundreds and thousands of citizens. You see the problems firsthand, and you are truly in the best position to address the problems. And maybe not in the best position to provide, the support, but to acknowledge what's happening and then also be a part of problem solving. And you can always take the opportunity. Are you doing everything you can, to preserve the human animal bond and keep people and pets together? Of course, when it is best for both of those. So I think kind of like looking at this and sharing your knowledge, saying, I have all of this knowledge. What can I share with my leadership? What can I share with community programming teams at the shelter if you have them? And again, even if you don't, you're not in the same department as the shelter, it's still information that you can share with shelter leadership. And that really will give them the best perspective on what's happening and what the needs are. Really, even consider if they don't have a community outreach team, you are in the community and you can provide that insight to them. So you are truly where change can start on understanding what's happening and how we can be more proactive in our programming. So, Haas and Field Services. So, we have four pathways that we really spend most of our time, and that's around pet support services, lost pet reunification, supported self rehoming, and intake to placement. So, if you go to our website, it's a plethora of resources and toolkits and webinars revolving around these topics. So, in the next few slides, we're going to kind of show you real life examples on how you can support your shelters and communities with these four really important efforts.
And before we dive into those, we do want to acknowledge, I think like Elke was stating, that how field services operates in relation to the animal shelter likely varies by community, right? We know some of you may be a part of the same organization, some of you may be separate. And so we're going to hear from you in just a second because we're curious what you all are experiencing in this room. But that collaboration is really key in whatever organizational setup that you have. You know, it can be as simple as knowing what resources the shelter has to offer and communicating those. Like maybe you get flyers from the shelter that make it easier for you to communicate with those as you are out in the community. It can go as far as being having direct communication with the shelter every day, right? Maybe you see an animal out in the field and you see a possible solution to the challenge in front of you, and you're able to coordinate with the shelter directly. So it can take a lot of different forms. And again, we're going to walk through some examples, but we are curious for those in the room, what department oversees your field services program?
Jen, I want to go, and some of you all may have heard him say this. So, Mike Wheeler gives a good example of like if you're a government entity and you're in this department, and this is really like based on like building collaboration with human services, which, we're going to kind of talk about the reason why here in a second. But it's kind of like go borrow, I think he uses the go borrow the stapler analogy, where just walk over to your human services friends and, borrow a stapler, but then start talking to them about the work you do and how that you might be able to support each other, getting them to better understand how important it is for them to understand the human animal bond and the importance, the role that pets play in the humans that they're serving, and vice versa.
Love that example. Sometimes it starts with a simple conversation. Okay, we have police department.
Animal health unit, that's cool.
Yeah.
Public safety, sheriff department, police department, local PD, public health. Do you see those, Jen? Am I rattling things off? You can already see. Okay.
You're good.
Animal services.
Okay, so we have a little bit of a mix in the room. Police department. Okay, thank you for sharing. That's super helpful. Animal shelter. Okay, great. And I think this will help kind of help frame when we get your participation in a little bit. Maybe what successes some of you are having, what challenges you face as you try to implement this type of work. Okay, move on, Elke.
Yeah, so we're just going to jump in just a tiny bit into the human, part of this. And we all know kind of statistics are slightly varying on how many pets are in homes. The stat we have here is 70% of families own pets, but we do know majority of homes have them, which means there are millions of different scenarios that people will find themselves in and that you are experiencing as well when you're out in the community. So it's really important for all of us across, animal welfare to view the needs of the animal through the eyes of the person and vice versa, and understand that by taking care of that person, we can assure that the animal is taken care of as well. And I know sometimes, we can get caught up in how the person got to a certain situation, but that's not helpful to the animal. We want to say, like, what can we do for this person to make life better for them as well as the animal? So basically understanding the whole picture before acting will really lead to more positive outcomes for both the animal and the person. And then it really comes down to knowing how to support that person. So we were talking about collaboration, more so shelter and maybe your own department if you're not within that sheltering system, but also understanding a little bit more about how to support that person with human services and social services, which is a completely another webinar that I'm sure is somewhere. And I'm also going to be doing one in another month around relationships. But Jen's going to talk to you a little bit more about how to understand what's happening with the person.
And one approach that can really help, again, like Elke said, try to get a better understanding and to be supportive of these situations, is a trauma-informed approach. And I'm kind of curious before I dive in, if y'all want to just put in the chat, is this something, an approach that your departments have explored before? Have you gotten any training in this? If y'all can just pop in the chat. And really, what it centers around is kind of a little bit of a what could be a change in mindset. So, again, trying to look at the situations in front of you and instead of having the outlook of, let's say, what's wrong with you, kind of flipping that around and saying what happened to you. And so what that does is kind of take us from what could potentially be a space of judgment and kind of flipping that into viewing everything through a lens of empathy. And so this approach really hinges on acknowledging the fact that most people have experienced some sort of trauma in their lifetime. Some people may be right in the middle of a traumatic event when they're interacting with you. And this trauma can impact our ability to even critically think and have a normal train of thought. It can impact physical health. And so it can really impact the whole situation. And so again, this is one of those topics that could truly be like a day-long workshop. So even the little bit I'm telling you now doesn't quite do it justice. So we're going to share with you some resources. Um, and so really a lot of this hinges around like creating a safe space. And even the way you can do that is pretty simple. It can be the way in which you even lead or participate in a conversation, creating that collaborative dialogue between both parties. And really empowering that other person to be a part of the conversation and thinking of solutions and having choice in the matter. So I'm going to give like a little bit of an example of what this could look like in a very practical sense. So even in a straightforward conversation where we're just trying to share some resources, it can be pretty easy to say, you know what, spaying and neutering your pet is really important. And here's why, da 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 da, because that is just top of mind for us. But what you could also say is, there can be some real benefits to spaying and neutering your pet. Would you like to hear about them? And even doing that simple act gives someone the choice to be an active participant in the conversation and can also help kind of reduce a power dynamic that can take place within being part of an organization, trying to have a conversation with someone. So again, this could be a whole day long thing, but I would really urge you all because I think not only can it lead to more constructive conversation, but can really help equip you with the tools to make you feel more confident in navigating those situations because we know they can be so hard and they can be really stressful. And so we want you to have the tools you need to have great conversations with people to be able to support them as best you can and have a true understanding of what's happening. So I will also put this in the chat if you'll give me just one moment, but you can scan this QR code on your phone. This toolkit that we've put together has a list of resources that you can access for free to view some training resources. And I do see in the chat, see, looks like Catherine used to be, oh wait. Oh, I do this and try to have my team do it as well, but no specific training. Yeah, so there could be opportunities to maybe formalize a little bit more of this training so everyone have access to what they need. Okay.
And what's great, there are, like you're showing those, sometime at San Diego Humane, when I was there, we were trying to figure out how to get this up and going. And even with like such extreme focus, it was hard to determine and go through all the things and search for the things. So it's great to have this resource, selection of resources at your fingertips where hopefully you can just like look through and see what's a good fit.
Yeah, and it doesn't, you can always tiptoe your way into it too, right? While we would all love to have, I'm sure, a big, robust training program, etc., maybe that's harder to implement. But maybe it just starts with conversation with your teams, right? Maybe we take one element of this trauma-informed approach, we talk about it at some team meeting spaces and say, okay, how can we implement this one small thing? And then you can slowly make your way through having kind of a more comprehensive approach to those conversations. But don't be afraid to start small and don't let that hold you back. It looks like someone said in the chat, our police department has a co-responding mental health clinician, and we're all mental health first aid certified. Police department is very supportive of any education that helps with calls. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that's great, Catherine. Okay, thanks for sharing.
Is it up?
I think you're up
Sorry.
next.
Is it up? Okay.
Yeah.
It looks different on my screen, so I see the resources.
Let me check real quick.
But as we're sitting here, I'm laughing at I'm not laughing.
There we go.
I'm just kind of thinking about this title, creating proactive programs, and I don't want to scare anybody by like, oh, I have to create programs. This really should kind of be like implementing an activity or an action, like actions that you can take. But they, kind of thinking about what can you do to support citizen requests in a proactive way. So let's go back, a few slides ago, where you are oftentimes the first point of contact and are seeing the needs of the community before they see them at the shelter. So again, it's your insight that can help shape programs that maybe for those that can develop programs or give you some more direction on how to engage and learn a little bit more from your community. And that will hopefully decrease the need for you to be providing intervention. Your community, your frustration and your community members' frustration can also hopefully be decreased by having these solutions to the problem before it becomes a significant problem. So it may not even be a solution that the shelter offers, but it could be just understanding the resources around you, and you are providing, tips and tricks to help them solve their problems that they're experiencing. So, what type of programming would be most beneficial in your community? So, just thinking all the things, whether it's a pet pantry, spay and neuter, what do you see is missing? And it could be a human service piece as well. Pet-friendly housing, yes. Mobile spay and neuter.
Low cost vet care.
Yeah, you might have the things, right? But there might not be enough, or you might not be able to get into them fast enough. I would imagine, especially what you all experience when someone needs to, maybe they're required to go see a veterinarian, and either the cost is inhibitive or it's hard to get in.
Low cost and better accessibility.
So the programs we're going to talk a little bit about is really more about, we can, what you can do in your field to learn more about what's happening in your community, making those connections and really, learning and understanding what's needed outside of what you just mentioned here. So again, we realize based on what we learned a little bit ago that you're all structured very differently and you have different nuances that you might not be able to follow through with some of these recommendations. But hopefully there's a couple of ideas that you can take away today to research and maybe implement or make recommendations for. If you do have a little bit more oversight in your community efforts, think about the easy lift first. You can use volunteers, neighborhood ambassadors to forward your message. But, looking at community outreach, in San Diego, Humane, we were starting to, we were fortunate enough to have an educator, but I know oftentimes the officers are the educators when schools do reach out to shelters. So any type of community outreach, just being seen and being seen as a supporter, not an adversary, just going out to events, tabling, or participating with the shelter, just stopping in, saying hi. So, your schedules, I'm sure, are pretty tight and being on the street is priority. but popping into an event and just, being seen as that welcoming presence at community events, partnering with human services, creating that referral system, providing food and supplies. Even if you don't have a pantry, I think oftentimes that people are donating food, so having that available to you is a great way of just, giving back and being part of the solution. And, here's some more ideas that can really enhance your relationship with the public and really keep dogs out of the shelters. We've been hearing a lot about fence repair over the last few years, and I will tell you, my first request for fence repair was probably like a 20-foot line of fence. Not something that we could tackle right away, but we found some other solutions. And it's finding the solutions for that little poodle that just kept sneaking away from the home and then took up the officer's time. Obviously, it was scaring the homeowner, and they didn't have the ability to fix their fence. Microchip scanning in the field, obviously returning in the field, which is something you all are aware of. Something different would be a spay and neuter transport. So if somebody needs help in spay and neuter and they're willing to do it, are you able to support in transporting? And then of course, instead of in lieu of citations, providing the resources when it's the right fit. Obviously, if it is something, when it's come to kind of those lower health issues that you can provide flea meds for and or direct them to low cost vet support if you have that in your community.
Okay, so let's think through this through the lens of a scenario, and much like Elke was giving samples, we'll kind of go through a few more of those. So for this one, it's all about integrating pet support into field services. So here's our scenario. A family's only car has broken down and they're struggling to get pet food until it is fixed as they live in a hard to reach area. They worry they will have to surrender their pet of 10 years. They contact animal services for assistance. So in this particular scenario, a field officer drops pet food off and asks the family if they need any additional supplies while their car is waiting to be fixed. They are informed of available human-centric services like a nearby human food pantry if interested. So in this particular scenario, the field service officer does have access to needed supplies, which is wonderful, and is also equipped with the knowledge of other community resources that the family may be interested in accessing. Actually, let me hop over to the chat, see if we have a comment. Let's see, Catherine said outreach is often so difficult because everything that we do has to go through the PD chain of command. We have to make a request with the public information officer to post even something simple on the Facebook page. Ask for the pavement temperature chart to be posted at the beginning of the summer and still waiting. So yeah, so you're experiencing some roadblocks to even do that communication that you're hoping to do. And so that was a perfect lead in to do you all have any either successes or challenges you want to share around providing pet support in the field? And we can use chat, but also if anyone does want to come off mute, we're open to that too. I'm also curious, Catherine, if, let's see, I mean, go through the chain of command. Like, do you all have a clear line of communication even for the requests that you have? Like, is it a clear pathway to get to a solution, or do you kind of have to take it based on the situation? Peter says a local rescue has agreed to hold or foster for up to 90 days, utilized in domestic violence cases. That's great. So highlighting a partnership there. Okay. We'll keep an eye on the chat. We'll go on to the next one. Okay, do you have anything to add on that one?
Oh, no. I was going to say NACA probably can help Jerica. Those relationships, right, and how government entities work is probably more their cup of tea.
Yeah, I was actually just going to type in the chat, but I'll just share it in regards to Peter's comment about the fostering for domestic violence. There is a group that I recently just met with called Bestie B&B. So I'll put their link in the chat. If you guys have not heard about Bestie B&B, I would definitely recommend learning about Bestie B&B. Oops,
And we are
sorry.
actually doing a collaborative webinar October, I don't remember, I think it's the 25th via Haas. But they have webinars all the time and how to get started with them and the work that on how they can help
Yeah.
um, start safety net foster type work in your community.
I think another thing too we've talked about before is literally just and Mike Wheeler talks about this, but finding an excuse to walk down the hall and visit your social services departments, right? I need borrow a stapler.
Wireless
Go
stapler.
it's always
Yep,
the
wireless
stapler.
stapler.
Finding a reason, even if it's just to pop in and say hello and introduce yourself. There's going to be situations in which you're going to be able to help each other out. And so by simply just going and introducing yourself to those human social services agencies within your local government, or even the nonprofits in your area is going to go a long way in helping to build those partnerships.
And so, in regards to lost pets, here's a scenario. A lost pet is reported in a neighborhood. An officer can utilize local social media platforms, Ring Neighbors, Nextdoor, Facebook, although you might have some struggles with policy, we acknowledge that, to see if anyone has posted to or post about the found animal and how the owner can reunite. So at this point, an officer hasn't even touched the animal, it's been reported. So again, depending on how big your community is, this is just another way of, I think social media, right, is really knowing like all the Facebooks that are around it, all of the platforms that are available to you, or and then maybe focusing on one if one is too many, or really knowing what your community uses. Like, they kind of start here and there, and all of a sudden you've got, 10 different lost pet Facebook pages, but maybe really looking at who's using what and maximizing that space so you're not feeling, like, oh, I have to post here, I have to post here, I have to post there. I would love to know, San Diego, Maine, when I left, just started using Ring Neighbors. And what's great about that is you can really hone in on location and radius. So you can post within a certain area, and it also will connect via facial recognition stuff. So Ring Neighbors is actually a really great platform if people are using it, though. People have to be using it in your community.
It's also free. I'm just going to throw that out there. It's
Yes.
free. And
Yeah.
from the ACO side, you can actually see and have your own login. So it's incredible.
hmm Yeah, and so right there. So if you do get an animal, so like say you physically have an animal in your care, you could go quickly and look and see. You could post too, like, picked up this dog, beagle, on the way to the shelter. If you aren't able, to stick around, you can at least let them know that the animal is safe and on their way to the shelter. So I guess we could share. Does anybody utilize social media in this way?
Hi, good morning. This is Victor Zavala with Clark County Animal Control out in Las Vegas, Nevada. Actually want to jump in on the accomplishments or what I think is kind of one of our successes in our department. About a year ago, we were able to fund a call center with one of our local nonprofits. So as calls come into our dispatch center, our dispatchers are able to redirect those phone calls directly to a pet resource call center where they're able to look for solutions to prevent animals from going to the shelter, give resources, give training, simple solutions. If that doesn't work, that caller is then pushed back towards us on the dispatch side, and then we actually create a field response. So it's one of those things where it was easy to sell to our leadership because it's cutting down on our need for field response. If we're able to prevent that call from ever hitting our call logs, then that frees us up to do more proactive work, going after backyard breeders, going after cruelty, whatever it is. As of right now, I think it's been a great success.
How
It
long did that take to get going?
it took quite a while and quite a bit of money. So right now they operate, I believe, 6 days a week for about
Mhm.
10 hours a day. We fund 2 or 3 part-time employees with that nonprofit. And from what I hear, our last numbers are over 100 calls a day that they receive, not just from us, but from some other animal control agencies in the area in our valley.
I think that's a great case study to share out. We might be reaching out.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think
Mhm.
one thing that as you were talking, Victor, made me think of, being in your roles as field services, like you're having to wear so many hats and know how to navigate so many types of conversations. So it seems like such a benefit to having like a team that is dedicated to taking those conversations at first point of contact. And like I imagine that would lift a lot of burden off. And then also that team can have that area of focus, which just means they're going to get really skilled at navigating those conversations, which is just awesome.
And I would also think just decreasing the time that people are wait, like through your dispatch, right? Not understanding maybe how calls flow through your dispatch, but time for each call. If your dispatch is trying to field those calls or trying to be supportive in any, even in a small way, it gives them the focus, right, of the work that they're really doing and able to still direct them to where they can get the help. That's great.
Okay, I have another scenario. A community member took in a pet after a family member passed away, but they cannot keep the pet long term. They are looking to surrender. And the solution in the field is that the officer shares options for rehoming pets and the benefits of doing so directly. And so offering other pathways for the pet to be rehomed rather than coming into the shelter, less stressful for the pet. And the person that knows them well can be a part of that process. I'm curious if folks are doing this already, and even you can even go as far as providing resources for like tips on writing pet bios or how to take good photos so they can market their pet well and really setting them up for success and finding a home for the pet.
I think developing, if you can, or you have those that can assist you in developing a one sheet on rehoming options with those tips and tricks, or just acknowledging that you know about Adopt a Pet and you direct them there, or because at least like with Adopt a Pet and the rehome sites that they have, like here's how to do it. However, we do know that sometimes getting having access to the internet or or the ability to understand and how to make that technology work can be a challenge. But just knowing those resources and offering them, taking the time to offer them.
And I'll also add that we have those types of resources in our resource center on our website, so you don't have to start from scratch and even compiling it. So we have a lot of those things available for you all that could be really useful in your roles. All right, so yeah, anybody have any insight into how this potentially has gone for you, what you've tried before? And if anybody wants to come off mute, you're more than welcome. I'm curious, like how often too, this would obviously just be anecdotal, like if someone is like say placing that call, thinking that your intention is to come pick up the pet, how often are you successful in kind of making the case that this is the best pathway for the pet and they take you up on that resource and recommendation for doing the rehoming on their end?
We have a pretty high success rate in Paris, Tennessee, with the people that understand that the shelter is a high stress area for those animals, and the behavior they exhibit at home is not going to mirror that at the shelter. So sometimes the rehoming from the shelter is not the best route to go through. So we try, and we've only got 4 employees at my shelter. We're kind of small, but everybody there understands, that certain situations arise and you have to take that surrender in that situation. But at the same time, we still offer those resources like, hey, there is 6 pages on Facebook that are local that, people rehome pets all the time. Definitely go down that avenue first. And we usually tell them like, hey, if you try it for a couple of weeks and it's just not working, then obviously, we can step in and try to help more. But, we try to keep people from using the shelter as, the first avenue they travel down. And it usually works pretty well. It just depends on the situation, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Sorry, Jen.
No, you're fine. I was just gonna say, I love that approach too, because you're not saying we're not here for you, just go do this thing. They clearly still have your support and you as a resource, if they're struggling to do so. So I love how you kind of framed what the option is.
Yeah, and then the fact that you know that there are Facebook pages out there, and oftentimes I think about some of these smaller communities where like we don't have that, in our little tiny community, but there may be a state page. Like I know, in Texas, the PASS program with Austin Pets Alive is statewide. It's not just Austin. So somebody maybe down south in Texas might not be aware of that, or they might be. So just going, okay, it might not exist in my small community, but maybe regionally it might exist. It's just,
Well, another
finding.
thing that we do too is I have a work cell phone, and I tell them, like, especially when they call the office, I'm like, hey, if you want to send me some pictures and some information about this dog, any information that you have, behavioral, medical, whatever, give me all the information, and I distribute that information and those pictures to different rescue groups and different places, people that have like long-term fosters and things that we don't offer from our shelter. We do try to distribute that information and those pictures and those videos or whatever they send us, as often as we can. Obviously, we've actually had a very huge merger. Hang on just one second.
Multitasking, classic.
And that actually goes into our next
I apologize for
topic. That's
that.
okay.
But basically it's a way for us to not only engage with those people, because just because they're in that situation right now where they can't have another animal or they can't take that specific animal, we try to make it a friendly environment. We're like, hey, we know you're going through it right now, we get it. Everybody's been through that situation in their life at one time or another, or know somebody that has, and we distribute that information because I've got contacts all over, the eastern part of the United States, up into Pennsylvania and down in Florida, pretty much everywhere on this side of the Mississippi. So we distribute that information to everyone that we can and try to help those people out. And 9 times out of 10, it usually works. But you get in that one situation where you have to take that surrender, and it's just, I mean, it sucks, but at the same time, it's something that has to be done. That's why we're there.
Yep,
Yeah.
and that's what people have learned, right? Over the years, we're the place, and now we're trying to say no. There's other options for you, and so teaching them that and giving them the resources that they need for that. And I think that going into the next, we don't need to even go. We only have a few minutes left, so I want to make sure we get through this. This next scenario is almost exactly like you just stated. Prior to pickup, connecting, giving the options. Having connections with the shelter or a rescue group. And Jen just said that we can't do this, but how about this? It's best for the dog, it's great for the owner, and it's great for the shelter. And let's jump to conclusion, Jen.
Good.
So, in a true sense of Haas, you can all be the solution to keeping people and pets together, of course, when it's best for both parties. And we just really want to enhance the overall effectiveness of community-oriented efforts and improve the outcomes. So thank you all so much for being here today. And we just have 2 minutes for questions, but of course you can always reach out to us. Jen's going to share the resource pages there, and we have Haas email that you can send questions to as well.
Feel free to, I'm going to put this in the chat in just a moment, this resource that's linked here. We have some toolkits that are specifically geared toward field services. Like Elke mentioned, our resource center, you can hop in and take a look at our content for free, webinars, blogs, toolkits, you name it. And there's our email address. We're always happy to connect. We'd love to hear from you. And I don't know if we have time for any questions. I'll leave that up to our
Got a
host.
minute.
Just want to say we appreciate it. It was a great presentation.
Thank you, Victor. Poor Jerica, she's multitasking too.
And thank you
Sorry,
for
I was trying to find my unmute button on my iPad and I couldn't figure it out. I figured it out. Okay. Thank you all for joining us. Elke, Jennifer, that was incredible. Always great information. And thank you all every day for what you guys do out there in the field and the shelter. Thank you for your sacrifices and for your courage and for everything that you do. We are incredibly grateful for you. And we will see you next month. So next month we are talking about AI, and I can't even tell you how cool it's going to be. We've got some amazing topics that we're talking about using AI for things for leaders, leadership type things, looking at trends. And as we were prepping for this, some of the information, I use AI quite a bit, I thought. And there's actually things that I was just like, oh my goodness, wow. So you won't want to miss it. We'll see you there. All right. Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.